Welcome to Chapter 5, Organizing Space and Materials. This week, in addition to the PowerPoint presentation, there are a few short videos that I'd like to share with you. So to get started, I need to pull up PowerPoint. And here we go. Okay, since you're not here, I can't tell if your books are closed or not. Okay. We can skip this. Indoor outdoor safety. Let's look at kind of child-proofing your classroom. You want to make sure that the electrical outlets at the children's level are covered with safety caps, extension cords of adequate length to reach from plug to connect objects and are not strung together. Something else to think about safety, and we really don't give much consideration to, would be the cords on the blinds. It sounds like it might be a little silly to say that, but unfortunately, many children die each year as a result of being tangled in the cords on window blinds. We want to make sure that the outdoor equipment is in good repair, no sharp edges or splinters, moving parts are lubricated. And what I'll probably do is take you up to the Child Development Center, and you can go around the back of the play area, the playground area, and do a critique. Do you see anything there that would be considered hazardous? Make sure there are no poisonous plants in the play yard. And one thing that we don't necessarily have to worry with, hopefully not around here, that they find to be quite problematic in the larger cities. Folks have to, teachers, adults, or what have you, have to scour the playgrounds to make sure that there are no syringes. Okay, moving forward with space. Don't keep the students in desks or in rows. Unfortunately, I have seen that for little ones in kindergarten, that it's just not appropriate to put them in straight rows or in desks. Vertical space you want to build up, and you'll see that image on page 140. So if you have confined space, you can't go out. What can you do? You can build up, but you have to be careful that it is a secure fixture or what have you. You don't want anything to tumble over, but check out the image on page 140. You'll get a better understanding. Private space. Okay, this is used for children to work independently and, or, to gain control of their thoughts and feelings. Sometimes kids just want to be alone. That's okay. Make sure there's a space where they can kind of go to and regroup. A small group space, that would be 2 to 6 children. Encourage quiet interaction with one another. They are likely to exhibit cooperative and helping behaviors when they are in close personal space. Right now, that is an issue. You look at the pandemic, we're doing everything we can to separate them. But in the ideal society, ideal world, they will be able to maintain that close personal space. So large group space, space in which several children listen to stories, sing, engage in games or other movement activities, and they share in whole group instruction. Sound, this is a good one. A generally noisy environment from which children cannot get relief is not conducive overall for cognitive development, cooperative, or in learning center work. Noise is a huge problem, and I'll give you an example of a classroom I was in that it was an issue. The building was an old building, and there was no central air, so we had window units, air conditioning units, and that became problematic whenever the unit was on. It was very noisy, so we turned the heat. We turn the air conditioner off so that it's quieter and not bothering the children. And if you do that, then they'll get hot, and that's not conducive to a learning environment. So it gets tricky. You have to figure out what the good balance is. Noisy classrooms can be challenging for students with hearing impairments, like myself with hearing aids, as well as students with autism. And autism is on the spectrum. You'll hear some people say, this child is on the spectrum. Autism is not one small little defined behavior. It is very, very, very broad. And this short little video will give you a little insight as to why sound can bother autistic children. After we have this commercial.
In this short video, we're going to answer the question, why do students with autism sometimes become very bothered by sound or by touch? That's a really great question. And sometimes people have very dramatic stories about students who get very upset with fire drills or loud gymnasium sounds and different things like that. Many individuals with autism exhibit unusual responses to what we call sensory input. They have difficulty processing that sensory information from touch, from vision, from hearing, from smell, from taste, from the sense of movement and the position of their body in space. It may be called a sensory processing disorder or a term similar to that. Their difficulty has to do with how their brains process and organize that sensory information. Sometimes they are hypersensitive or oversensitive to that sensory input, and sometimes they are hyposensitive or undersensitive to all that sensory information. The occupational therapist is an important person on the team to help sort out all that student's individual needs and help to plan for appropriate intervention for them.
All right. Another thing about some children with autism, they do not accept change very well. So, for example, some teachers, well, most teachers like to rearrange their classrooms periodically throughout the year. If you have a child with autism, once again, not all autistic children will behave in this manner, but some do not adapt well to change. So you have to think, what do I do? Do I rearrange my room over the weekend and hope for the best when the child comes into the classroom on Monday? Or what can I do to make sure that the child doesn't panic? The best possible way that you can handle that is to have a conversation with the child first, to let the child know that you're going to rearrange the room. And you could ask the child where he or she would like to sit, for example. The ideal situation would be for the guardian to bring the child into the classroom over the weekend so that he or she can take in the change. So it's not so abrupt on Monday morning. So carpet or no carpet. So carpet is good for keeping the noise level down. But if you're in a classroom that does not have carpet, the scraping of the chairs can be incredibly frustrating. Well, not just for children with autism, but most everyone. Some teachers, they remedy that problem by putting tennis balls on the legs of the chairs. And I mentioned the air conditioner. And we're not here to discuss this, so we'll move on. I want to make sure that furnishings, tools, and equipment, that they should be appropriate for the size of the children using them. And children experience serious discomfort if their feet do not touch the floor when they're seated. Conversely, if their knees bump into the table, that would be another issue. And if you think back, when we think of kid-friendly furniture, we attribute that to Maria Montessori. Because we know that if a child's legs dangle, you're sitting there and your feet are dangling, they don't have the support of the floor. After a while, their backs are going to start hurting. And for mobility, children should be able to move without bumping into each other. And I'm going to go off the side note just a little bit. As far as bumping into each other, make sure when you arrange your classroom that chairs are not back to back, very close together, because you're going to have a lot of complaining arguments if one chair is bumping into another. Avoid long empty spaces because they invite running or hurrying. Attractiveness. Okay, an attractive environment is one that appeals to the senses. And you'll notice when you come into our classroom, the walls aren't stark. You've probably been in many classrooms on this campus. You walk in, nothing on the walls, no color, nothing. So you come into our classroom, it's quite different. So it is very appealing to the senses. We look at texture, color, pattern, design, scent, and sound. They all contribute to the sense of beauty and place. The other word we use for that would be aesthetics. So it is aesthetically pleasing. And just go back, a little side note, I always joke about using the high school down the street, Mora, that it looks like if you put, barbed wire around it, it would be a correctional facility. Recently found out that the designers of that building also build prisons. They encourage children to care for their learning and living environment by putting materials back where they belong and participate in cleaning. That is teaching them some responsibility. In a classroom that is more home-like and less institutional helps children feel secure and ready to learn. Now, it can also be, you have to have a good balance. It can also be too busy. So once again, depending on the type of student you have, you may have to alter your environment just a little bit. In storage, ideally materials will be in open shelving if children are to have access to them. In the enclosed cupboards or on high shelves if the teacher needs to maintain control of the materials. Some of the things that we have in our classroom, I look at some of the materials, if this really were an early childhood classroom, there are some things I would put away, lock cabinet or up on the higher shelf. One, for example, the whiteboard. You wouldn't want children to have access to that report. Okay. And we'll skip that. Okay, another couple of short videos. How do we set up a preschool classroom? Sounds like it would be something simple, but not always. Let's take a lesson from the experts here.
So I've got my essay written, and I've been working on it for about
After the commercial.
So now I'm going to show you how I use Grammarly to edit.
Hi, my name is Krista Wesley, and this is how you set up a preschool classroom. Okay, when you're setting up a preschool classroom, there are certain things you want to keep in mind. You want to arrange the room so the children are visible at all times. So when you're setting up the shelving, don't have a corner where you can't see the kids at all, or when you're setting up the cubbies. Also, you want to try to keep your noisy and your quiet centers separate. They don't have to be like across the room from each other, but at least separate them by another center that's a little bit more quiet and laid back. For example, you don't want to put your block center right next to your books and reading center because it can get very loud in the block center with the kids making car sounds and everything else. Also, for example, art center, you're going to want to keep that near a sink and probably not on carpet if you have the option. You can make a lot of messes in that area. And this goes for this also when they eat, wherever they're eating, you want to keep those tables closer to the sink where they can wash their hands afterwards. Another thing to remember is to have a parent information board available for the parents to look at. And that information will have maybe what they're eating for lunch every day for the month, what your lesson plans are for the week, any events going on, a calendar saying when the school is going to be closed. And those are just a few examples of different things you can put on your parent information board, but you definitely want to have that somewhere where they can see it. So maybe next to the children's cubbies, And you want to keep the cubbies closer to the door also so that they can come in and drop their kids off and set their items that they brought in with them in the cubbies, and then just make it easily accessible for in and out of the front door. Also make sure your toys are easily accessible and your art supplies and different things that they need to have. Don't make it closed off in cupboards where they don't see it and out of sight, out of mind. So make sure they can get to everything. And finally, you want to make sure that you have multicultural, realistic pictures around your room with food, people, and animals, and just have them posted all over. And make sure that you have your room labeled with your toys also. So if you have blocks, have a label that says blocks right next to it. And that is how you set up a preschool classroom.
From the outset. Now to okay, so we'll just skip that one. Learning centers, and this young lady just touched on them. So learning centers are well-defined interest areas that provide children with a wide range of materials and opportunities to engage hands-on learning across the curriculum. And as the young lady just mentioned, make sure that they're visible. The materials are visible. Some common types. Blocks, yes, very, very, very popular. Creative arts, dramatic play. Okay, with dramatic play, if you're using any type of clothing, make sure that you keep it washed and be careful of the hats. I don't know how much of a problem it is around here where I'm from. Head lice was an issue. Language arts, science, and math. Okay, if you look in your book, pages 153 to 160, you're going to have other suggestions for your centers. And if we were together, I would ask you to discuss what centers you have seen in the rooms you have. So whenever you have an activity for your center, introduce the activity, explain its purpose, and demonstrate the proper use of materials. Introduce new centers or more complex activities only after general center activity has begun. Really good thing, digital pictures. Digital pictures of students going through the steps will help, especially the younger children. And we also see this beneficial for some special needs children. They use a variety of direction-giving strategies, pictographs for very young children, written instructions or recorded oral instructions. Provide center activities to support the need to practice skills previously taught, and structure the activities in a way in which children can complete the project independently. You don't want to have to be running back and forth to a center to explain. Make sure that the children are quite capable. General guidelines for the selection and use of materials. I'm on page 169 now. Provide firsthand experience with real things. We call that realia. Provide complete, safe, and usable materials. You also want to provide literacy-related materials in all of the centers. Provide materials representing national and local diversity. Biggie, demonstrate. So demonstrate the proper use of materials and equipment. And that also, when you do that, just don't say do this. After you are demonstrating, go through and do something the wrong way. For example, hold up, you're using markers. If you hold the marker up to your nose and you ask the children, is it okay if I smell this and I sniff it? If they say yeah, then you better go back and start reteach. So you want them to have a good understanding of how to use materials. Purchase sturdy, high quality equipment and materials and demonstrate the proper care and storage of materials. You want to supervise the children as they take on organizational tasks. and incorporate loose parts from the natural environment and discards ensured variety of materials to support each domain. And use the same materials for many purposes. And at one time, I forget which course, but we talk about open-ended materials. This is what we're looking at now. Something that can be used in many different ways. And that wraps up the chapter for this week. Unfortunately, we flew through it simply because we didn't have an opportunity to discuss any of the topics. So if you have any questions about this week's chapter, please feel free to contact me, either email, we can set up a Zoom meeting, you can call me. My number is 863-7541. And hopefully I will be able to see you in class next week. Take care.